Okay, everybody, we're going to get started. For those of you who just joined us, this is going to be the webinar for the Red Team Go new owner contract module. Uh, we're going to get into all the details as we proceed through here. But if you've been a Red Team client for any length of time uh, up until today, you may be used to the old owner contract module. I want to spend just a minute talking about the difference between the two. If you're new to Red Team, first of all, welcome. Second of all, you're joining at a great time in the context of this new owner contract module. Because historically, what you've had to do if you've had an owner contract document that you wanted to use for your purpose as a custom owner contract document, we were more than happy and able to accommodate that, but there was a process to go through. If it wasn't already in a Word document, you would have to convert it into the Word format, send it to me or Eileen, and I apologize, but Eileen is with us as well. If you don't know Eileen already, she is another implementation specialist here with Red Team. She and I both work with the Red Team Go platform. If you have any questions, you can use the chat feature or the Q&A feature to ask your questions, and Eileen will be happy to make sure we get the answer for you. Like I said, you would have to make sure the owner contract is in a Word document, send it to your implementation specialist. We would then have to turn around and create a ticket for our programmers to work with it. And then depending on their workload, there might be a really fast turnaround or maybe a few more days to get that done. So like I said, we were more than happy and able to accommodate your request and to program your custom owner contract document. But there was a bit of a process before, so we recognize that and we put some work into it. And again, if you've used the prior version of the owner contract module before, I think you're going to be very pleased with the new version of it. So the beauty of it, of the new module, is that you are in complete control of your owner contracts now. You don't have to get myself or Eileen involved in it. There's no turnaround time. You don't have to wait for programmers. You don't have to format it, in a certain language or anything. You are in complete control. So now you can customize your own owner contracts on your timeline at your pace. You don't have to wait for anybody else to do their part in order to get this done for you. Also, prior to the new owner contract module, part of your deal with Red Team Go allowed for up to 2 custom contract documents to be programmed for you to be available in your site. Now, that could have been any combination of owner contracts and subcontracts. So if you had 2 owner contracts, we could do that for you. 2 subcontract documents, we could do that for you, 1 of each. But now the sky is the limit. You can create as many custom owner contracts as you want. Like I said, we would do up to 2 for you previously. Anything beyond that, there would be a cost associated with that. Now, I mean, you can put 100 of them in there if you want. You can create as many contract documents as you want that would be available in your system. Let's take a look. Now, when we dive in here, you'll see that there's kind of 2 sides to this coin. The first part we're going to look at is in administration. So if you're an administrator in your Red Team Go system, you will be the one that has access to this, or anybody else on your team who's an administrator in the system. You'll have access to this, and this is where you can create any number of owner contract documents that you want or need in your system. Anybody who is not an administrator will not have access to get into the system and edit and modify and customize and all that. they will only be able to work with the documents that you create or make available in the system. And like I said, we'll dive into that a little bit more. And then the other side of that is writing the actual owner contract for a particular project. This is where your project managers will have access to the documents that you created in administration. And again, we'll look at that in more detail as we move forward. Excuse me. So in administration, you'll see here that we'll be able to use a boilerplate version of an owner contract. So what that is there's already a default contract document available in your system for you to work with. You can change any or all of it, but just so you know, you don't have to start this from scratch. So you'll have the ability to go in there and change any of the wording in there, formatting if you need to make something bold or italics or different fonts or something like that. You can configure the arrangement of the different sections of the contract. And I know I've had a bunch of slides here and we haven't seen anything yet, but as we clip along here, we'll be able to put eyes on each of the different things that I'm talking about. Plus, if you have an AIA license, you'll have the ability to work with those. And also if you, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Hold on one second. All right. So when you log into your RedTeam system, if you go up to the top right, on mine it says system account. That's our training login. So if you're logged into your RedTeam site, up at the top right, you should see your name. So when I reference the profile tab, that's what I'm talking about. So if we go to the profile tab, we'll get the drop down, we'll click on administration. And then we'll go over to the left side after we click on administration, click on defaults, which will open up the other menu, the other drop down there, and we'll click on owner contracts. That's how we navigate to the administration side of the owner contract module. So when we do that, you'll see that along the left side, not the far left side, but under where it says owner contracts, we have a list of different contract documents that are available for us to use. Again, I touched on this already. If you have an AIA license, those documents will be available to you. If you don't, the garden variety version of this, you will initially only have the one that says owner contract that we see in that screenshot right there. But as you add additional ones, if you add additional ones, they'll all show up in this list over on the left side. And I specifically pointed out AIA. Also, if you have consensus docs, if you have a license for consensus docs, those will show up. And also, if you had, prior to the release of this module, if we had created a custom contract for you previously, those would show up in your system as well. Excuse me. So if we click on the left pointing arrow, if you look up at the top on the screenshot where it says administration, and you'll see this functionality in a lot of different places in RedTeam, generally where we have what I usually call the second left side menu. We have the ability to collapse that second left side menu to kind of give us a little bit more real estate to work with. So just wanted to point that out. Again, that's not particular to this module. We'll see that in a lot of different areas in RedTeam, but if you want to give yourself more space to work with, there's always that option to collapse that menu. And while I'm talking, again, I want to remind you that we have Eileen with us as well. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to use the chat window or the Q&A function as well. And we'll do our best to get those answers for you as quickly as we can. So I mentioned already that we have the list of contracts that are available to us. I drew a box around a couple of different things here that I want to point out. First of all, you'll see that the owner contract that's highlighted, that field, that entire line is in pink. That's just kind of a visual cue to show us which document we're actively working with. It's not included in the screenshot, but because that line is highlighted in pink, over to the right, we would normally see the actual contract document that we have to work with, as well as the AIA, and as I mentioned before, any other third-party owner contracts. When we click on the three dots or the ellipsis icon over to the right of any of these, we have a handful of options, from edit down to delete. I want to point out the set inactive. So what this does is, let's say we have owner contract 2, owner contract 3. Let's say we have up to owner contract 10. If maybe 9 and 10, we don't want our PMs to be able to use to write contracts for projects. We can click on the ellipsis icon, the three dots, and set it to inactive. What that does is it retains that document in administration. But if your PM goes to write an owner contract for a specific project, those documents in my scenario, owner contract 9 and 10, would not be available on their list. They would not have access to use those documents if you choose to set them to inactive. So as an administrator, you have complete control, not only over editing the individual documents, but you're able to control what your PMs have access to use for live projects. You'll see that when we move it to inactive, in this case, owner contract 2 is now grayed out. Again, if we have a project manager that is getting a new project started and they go to write an owner contract for that project, right now they would have owner contract and the AIA documents because those are live. But owner contract 2 would not be in that list. It wouldn't even be on their listing grayed out. It just would not be on their list at all. So it would not be an option for them. When we click into one of the contract documents over on the left, so again, in the screenshot, we see the one that's highlighted in pink. That's the one that we're actively working with. So when we select one of them, the right portion of the screenshot here is the document itself, the owner contract document. So there's a few things I want to point out. The tour, again, if you're already a RedTeam Go client, I'm guessing that you're probably pretty familiar with seeing that tour button. It's in most of the modules that we have, and it's just one of many resources that's available to you in the event that you ever get stuck or have a question. So you can click on that tour. Again, it's not specific to the owner contract module. You'll find that the tour button is available in several different modules to kind of help you along. Again, that's one of several different resources that's available to you. And then you have the option to set default values. We'll look at that in just a minute. And then edit is the bulk of what we're going to talk about in administration today. So if you click on edit, the default document will present on the screen slightly differently. So now we see over on the left side, we've got those 8 different tiles for the scope of work, drawings, addenda, all of those tiles over there on the left. Those are automated tiles. So what you can do with those is you can drag one of those. Let's say you want each article of contract to be on its own page and you want to throw a page break in between each article. You can grab that page break, just drag and drop it into wherever you need that page break to be. Or again, you can add a blank section or a signature line or any of those tiles that are available over on the left. So I mentioned that those are automated, kind of a segue into the body of the document now. Anything that we see in blue with that light blue background, those are automated fields. So this is where the system is going to do some of the heavy lifting for you. You don't have to go and look up the address for the owner or the project address The name of the architect or anything like that. Anything in blue is going to be automated. So the system is going to go find that information for you from the information that you've already provided for the project. The agreement date, the very top blue field. Again, all of these fields will auto-populate for you. So that's a little bit less that you have to do. Moving to the right of those 8 tiles, we've got a few different arrows up at the top left of the document. We've got the crossed arrows, and I apologize, I'm falling behind on my navigation of the slides here. So the crossed arrows will let you drag this specific section of the contract anywhere you want in the document. So if you want this very first page to be page 4, or the final page of the document, anything like that, you can use those crossed arrows to drag just that section anywhere you need it to be. Those next 2 arrows will let you jump this section. And what I mean by that is, instead of dragging page 1 down to page 7 or whatever, we can just bump it down by 1 section. So if we use the down arrow right now, it'll move section 1 down to section 2. So that'll move it just by one place. And then the paper and pencil icon there will let you edit just this section. Keep in mind that we've already clicked on edit to get here. Let me back up a little bit. When we clicked on the edit in this screenshot, it took us into the ability to edit the document as a whole. But now with this up at the top left with the pen or paper and pencil icon, we can edit just this section. Before I do that, I want to point out the other highlighted items up at the top right. We've got save, which is grayed out right now because we haven't made any changes. The second we make any changes to this document, that save button will be active for us. Print is just what you think it is, reset to default. So you'll see that a couple different places. If we get in here and we're changing this language and this font and making this bold and whatever changes we've made, if we've decided that this is just a mess now, we need to start all over again, we can reset to default and it'll bring us back to the original state where we can begin our edits all over again. And then cancel will just cancel the edit function that we're currently in. And then the trash can will only get rid of this section. All right, so I've already talked about that. Just talked about that and the trash can. All right, so now we're going to edit just the section. So we're going to click on the paper and pencil. So again, it kind of zooms in just a little bit more. Over on the left side, similar to those 8 tiles that we had available to us in the previous step, we've got a long list. You'll see there's a scroll bar over on the left side of the screenshot. Those are all automated functions that we can drag into the document. With the 8 tiles, I mentioned that, the page break or the signature line, anything along those lines. Here we have a lot more options. If you want to have the owner address or the architect name or whatever, we've got again a very long list of options over on the left side that you can just drag and drop into the document wherever you need them to be. And again, the system will do the work for you after that. And if we drag the architect mobile phone automation in there somewhere, if we have that in the project already, the system will go grab that information for us and pull it into the owner contract for us. Excuse me. We've already talked about the light blue background and those are automated, but anything that's not light blue, we can edit just like we normally would any other document. So if we need to get in there and again change the language or the formatting or anything like that, we can do that for anything that's not highlighted in blue. And one thing I kind of skipped over, I mentioned it a couple of times, but up at the top of the section are all the standard formatting tools that you would expect to see. So again, you can make it something bold or strike through it, or change the size of the font or align it, center align it, whatever. You've got all those different standard formatting tools up at the top. I'm kind of going on and on. Does anybody have any questions? I'll give you just a minute to ask any questions that you may have. Okay. Excuse me. So again, I've already touched on this, that there was the reset default button. When we saw it last time, it was for the for the document as a whole. We have that option here as well, and when we're editing the section. So if we've gotten in here to this section and we've just made a mess of it, or we don't like this, don't like that, whatever, we can go up to the top right and reset it to its original state and start all over again. Once we're done editing, again, the section, we can click on save. And that's really all we've got on the administration side. The next thing we're going to look at is on the project specific side, where we're going to write contracts for a particular project. Again, before we move forward, does anybody have any questions about anything? I'll give you just a minute to type if you have any questions.
Doesn't look like we have any right now, Ted.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Mhm.
All right, so like I said, now we're going to look at writing the contract for a specific project. This is where we're shifting roles in the system. So again, just to reiterate, the previous portion that we were talking through, the administration side, is only available if you're an administrator in the system. So if you're a project manager, superintendent, an accountant, anything along those lines, in terms of your role in the RedTeam Go system, you would not have the ability to work with those contracts, to modify them, edit them, move them to inactive, anything like that. But now that we're on the other side of that coin, and we're looking at actual writing a contract for a project, this is where the project manager is going to come into it, and this part they will have access to. So the first thing we need to make sure, and again, if you've been a RedTeam client for a little while, you should be familiar with this, but just in case you've never seen RedTeam before, when you go into a project in your system, the screenshot I have here is a portion of the project dashboard. So it's kind of a high level view of the project as a whole. Up at the top right, you've got the status of the project. Right now, this says pending. In order for you to work with owner contracts, let me go back just a little bit. In order for you to work with owner contracts, the project has to be in the pending status. If you're the status before that is bidding, so if your project is in the bidding status, you won't have access to write owner contracts yet. So if you're logging in and wanting to sit down and write your owner contracts, but you see that you don't have access to that module yet, the first thing you need to do is look at the status of the project up at the top right and make sure that the project is in the pending status. So when we do that, over on the left side, we've got the left side menu. We've got, you'll see that project dashboard up at the top is highlighted in pink. That shows us that that's the module that we're in. But then we're going to navigate to the commitments drop down and click on owner contracts. And it looks like we have a question. So the question is, will we still have access to owner contracts if it gets moved forward out of pending? Great question. So as a project manager, the next phase after pending is that the project would be in progress. At that point, you don't have access to write another owner contract. And Eileen, I'm sorry, this is saying that you would like to answer the question. Is it, were you wanting to answer that?
Oh, no, I was just selecting it, saying that we were going to
Gotcha,
answer it live.
gotcha. Yeah, so once you move forward to in progress, you won't have access to go back and write the contract again or write another contract. The assumption is that if you're moving forward to in progress, then you've got a signed owner contract in place. Can we still edit an owner contract and move forward? So Tambra, I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, let me know and I'll be happy to come back to it.
Mhm. Yeah, so
Um,
Tambra, once the project is pushed in progress, you can't edit the owner contract at all. You can view the
right,
owner contract with the signatures. You can import a signed contract outside of Red Team, but you won't be able to go into it and edit it. If you needed to do that, just like Ted said, it's once the project is in progress, you have a signed contract.
right. Thank you, Eileen. Got it. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the question, Tambra. If you have any other questions, please let us know. The project is in pending. So over on the left side menu, we're going to navigate to commitments, which is going to open a drop down for us. And you'll see that we have the 7 different options. I'm sorry, 6 different options in commitments. But given the status of the project, we're in pending. The only option that's available to us right now is owner contracts. Once we move forward into in progress is where we'll have access to more of those options. But for right now, we're just going to click on owner contracts. Now, this is going to look very similar to the administration side with a couple of differences. You'll see that over on the left side, we see that same list of contracts. But if you remember back when we were looking at the list of contracts that were available to us, we moved one of them, owner contract 2, we moved that to inactive. So now we're on the live project side where the project manager is accessing the list of documents that they have available to them to work with. We see that owner contract 2 is nowhere on this list because in administration, we already made it inactive. Also along the top, we've got a handful of fields to fill out. So the start date and end date of the project, the agreement date, print date, etc. We've also got alternates, units, and phases. And I already mentioned that we've got the tour button up there, which again, if you're familiar with RedTeam Go already, you're probably very used to seeing that up at the top right. We've also got the import button. We're going to look at that a little bit more in just a minute. So like I said, this looks very similar to what we saw in administration with the exception of the options up at the top, which we're going to look at. So here's the dates and the retainage. So your material and work retainage automatically populate here for you based on your system defaults that you've provided. But we have the option to change these here at the project level. So if you need to change these to 10%, 10%, or 0 and 0, or whatever you need them to be, you can write these here at the project level. And then the start date, end date, agreement, and print date. Each of those, if you're not already familiar with RedTeam Go, you can click into any of those and you'll get a pop-up calendar. You can select the date that you need for that particular field. Over on the right, we've got alternates, units, and phases. So when we were building the project out, when we were bidding the project, if there were any alternates, units, or phases that we created with the project, we would have the option to pull them into this project. So if we had a flooring alternate that was going to be another $15,000 or whatever it might be, and the owner said yes, I want to go ahead with that alternate, I can click on add alternate, select the flooring alternate that we created, and the contract value up at the top would adjust accordingly. So it would add that $15,000 to the total contract value up at the top. And then similarly for phases and units, if we had those created already, we would have the option to add those to this contract, and the contract value would adjust accordingly. And adding units. So the scenario that I usually use for this is, let's say you're building an apartment building, and in that apartment building, you've got studio apartments and 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 2 bedroom, 1 bath, whatever, all the variations that you would typically see in an apartment building. When you're in bidding, you can build your bid for one studio apartment, one bedroom, 1 bath, etc., and everything that goes into each one. So all the drywall, all the electrical, plumbing, flooring, just all the stuff that you need to build one studio apartment. Then all you have to do is when you click on add units here, you can indicate that we're going to build 40 studio apartments. It will do the math for you and again adjust the contract value accordingly. Up the top right, we've got the import button. So there's two different options in import. We're going to look at those in just a minute. But first, we're going to select the document that we want to work with. So we're going to use just owner contract. And again, we touched on this in administration, but now we see those light blue fields don't just have generic information in there. This is project specific now. So this is what I was talking about, where the system is going to do the work for you and go grab that information automatically for you. You don't have to go get the owner name and address and all this other information. You'll see at the bottom of the screenshot for the architect, it says architect company not set. That's only because we made this as a training project and we just don't have an architect of record assigned to this particular project. But if you did, that information would be filled in for you automatically as well. Again, just like in administration, we have the option to edit, but it's a little bit different now. In administration, we only have the edit button at this point, but now we also have the option to sign, and we'll look at that, but there's two different options with the sign drop down there, and we have the option to print. And again, we'll look at those. So going back to the import button, we've got those two options. We can import a contract or we can import and manage attachments. So I think Eileen touched on this just a moment ago. But if you get an owner contract that's been either written by the owner, or if you've sent the owner a contract and they've printed it out, signed it, and sent it back to you outside the system, you have the option to import that document if you received it from outside the system. And then we can add and manage attachments as well. So when we look at attachments, we'll get this window that pops up over on the right-hand side. We can drag and drop the file. I'm guessing that everybody's used to seeing that in pretty much every website that you work with now. But you can click in that window, go grab the file for the attachment that you want to include with this contract. And it'll show up just below that window. It'll say, abc123.pdf or whatever the name of the file is, it'll show up there. And then up at the top right where it says attachment title, it'll try to read the name of the file for you and autofill that, but you can override that. And you can manually name that something different if you need to. The next field that I want to look at right now where it says embedded attachment, the blue arrow is kind of covering up part of it, but there's actually a drop down there. If I go back one screen, yeah. So right now where it says select attachment placement, it's actually a drop down where we can select either embedded or linked. I opted to use embedded for this demonstration, and then I can click upload attachment. What that's going to do is it's going to include that attachment with the owner contract, and it will show up as an attachment after the signature page. So after the very last page of the owner contract where the signatures are, you'll get another page that's added to it with these attachments. So now, because I clicked on upload attachment and I told the system I wanted that to be embedded, it now shows up down below in the embedded attachment section. I also have the option to make it a linked attachment, excuse me, which will work similarly, except for you'll get a page that just has a list of links to your attachments. So you can either provide the attachments essentially as PDFs that are added to the document, or as a page with links to the documents outside of the document. I feel like that may have been a little bit confusing the way that I worded that. If you have any questions about that, let me know. I'm happy to revisit that. All right, so again, it shows that we've got it in the embedded attachment section. Going back out to the edit, sign, and print options, if I click on sign, I mentioned that there's two options here. I can either sign and send or request a signature. So this may seem straightforward, just to make sure I'm not leaving anybody behind. We have the option to either sign it first and then send it, or don't sign it and then send it to the owner and ask them to sign it first. You have the option to do it either way. So I clicked on sign and send. So when we do that, we get this window that pops up. It's a preparation checklist to make sure basically that we have all our ducks in a row, and make sure that we've done everything that we should be doing before we're sending a contract out to be reviewed and signed. So when I did this, I filled out the information, the start date, end date, all of that, but I intentionally did not provide the agreement date just to show you what happens if you don't provide all the information. So right now it's missing one item from that checklist. And you'll see that up at the top right, the only option it gives me right now is to return and complete. It does not let me move forward and send it off without that agreement date or the start date or whatever information I may have missed. So I'm going to go ahead and return and complete. Now I've done that. So now it shows a big green check mark up at the top left. Everything on our checklist is, has a green check mark. The system is happy. We can move forward. So now we have the option at the top right to proceed and sign. So now it's going to show us just a PDF version instead of in the RedTeam module. It just shows us the PDF version of the contract that we've written. And then down at the right, we have the option to either close this window or go ahead and electronically sign it. So if we click on electronically sign, we have to fill out two fields. This is basically to make sure that we don't get carried away with our clicking. It makes us kind of slow down and make sure we're taking a very deliberate action. And it's asking you to provide your name and title. As soon as you enter information there, you'll see that we now have the blue button that's available to us to agree and sign. It will let you know that it did what you asked it to do. That confirmation on the bigger of the two screenshots is letting us know that it's been signed and sent out to the owner. Just backing up just a little bit, this is based on me clicking sign and send as opposed to request signature. And then after it's been signed and sent, I've also got the option down at the bottom right of the window to either download the signed version of the contract that I just electronically signed or just close the window. Excuse me. So now after I've signed and sent it, this is what's going to look like in the owner contract module. It's just a PDF. We don't see an option to edit it anymore because again, we've already signed it and sent it off to the owner. And then we up at the top right, and I kind of skipped over this, I'll go back. Up at the top right where we have that send button, we have a couple of options. We have the option to send it or request signature. So if you sent this off to the owner and they call you up, text you, email you, whatever, next week and say, I know you sent it to me, for the life of me, I can't find this. Can you send it again? You have the option to send it again, but again, you don't have the option to edit it anymore. Or if you have sent it and you haven't heard back from them, you can request a signature, which will kind of nudge them to provide a signature and send it back to you. Any questions on the project specific side of owner contracts? Can you still edit it if you're just sending for signature? That's a good question. Eileen, do you know offhand?
Yeah, so if you've already sent it out for signature, as long as they have not signed it, you can unlock and edit it. But then you would have to, go through the process again so that they can sign it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Is
Tambra, I
that
hope
what you
that
meant,
answers your
Tambra?
question.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect.
And if you do sign it first and you send it to them and you need to edit it, then you would just need to unsign it, which you can do as an administrator. You would go to administration, unlock, unsign. You would unsign it, make the changes,
Right.
re-sign it or not, and then send it back out to them for their review and signature.
Thank you, Eileen. All right, it doesn't look like we have any other questions. In the event that any of you think of any other questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Eileen, or your client success manager. Any of us can help you, or you can reach out to support. They'll be happy to help you with any questions that you may have as well. So that's all we've got. I appreciate you making time in your day. I know everybody's busy, so we appreciate your time. And we hope you'll join us again and let us know if you have any other questions.